You woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning again, didn't you? That same tightness in your chest. That quiet pressure that feels like something is sitting on your lungs. Not sharp pain, not a panic attack exactly. Just a heavy awareness that something is wrong. And the worst part is you cannot clearly explain what it is. Not just work. Not just family responsibilities. It feels bigger than that. It feels like the ground under your life is shifting in slow motion, and your body feels it before your mind can put it into words. Maybe it started after reading another article about artificial intelligence replacing entire industries. Maybe it was the moment you realized you cannot tell the difference anymore between something written by a human and something generated by a machine. Maybe it was when your 10-year-old daughter asked a virtual assistant for advice instead of asking you, and she sounded comfortable, natural, almost more connected to that device than to you. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it was just a moment you tried to imagine the world 5 years from now, and you couldn't. You tried to picture what your job will look like, what education will mean, what money will mean, what relationships will feel like, and your mind went blank. That blank space is not emptiness, it is uncertainty, and uncertainty at this scale creates paralysis. This is not just your private anxiety. It is the early signal of something much larger, something collective, something historical. We are moving toward a psychological turning point that will not feel like a small adjustment. It will feel like disorientation, and most people are not prepared, not because they are weak, not because they are lazy, but because they do not understand what is actually breaking. For thousands of years, human mental stability has depended on three invisible pillars. You rarely notice them when they are strong, but you feel it immediately when they start to crack. For most of human history, life changed slowly. A young person could look at their parents and grandparents and have a realistic sense of what their own life would look like. The tools improved slowly. The economy shifted slowly. Even revolutions unfolded over decades. There was time to adjust, time to learn, time to prepare. You could choose a profession and reasonably expect it to exist for your lifetime. You could build a house and assume the surrounding society would not radically transform every few years. You could imagine your children living in a world that resembled yours. That stability created psychological safety. Even when life was hard, it was predictable. Now that predictability is dissolving. The speed of technological development is no longer linear. It is exponential. Skills that were valuable 5 years ago are already outdated. Entire job categories appear and disappear within a single decade. A programmer cannot be certain their expertise will matter in 2030. A lawyer cannot be sure algorithms will not handle most legal analysis. A doctor cannot confidently say artificial intelligence will not outperform human diagnosis in key areas. Parents are being asked to prepare children for a future they cannot describe. Schools are teaching material that may not be relevant by the time students graduate. The idea of planning a 30-year career feels almost unrealistic. When the future becomes fog, the mind loses its anchor. The second pillar is personal agency, the belief that your choices matter, that your effort produces results, that you can shape your destiny through discipline, intelligence, persistence. This belief has been central to human psychology. Even in rigid societies, people found areas where they could act. They could work harder. They could save money. They could improve a skill. They could build something with their hands. They could influence their family. There was a sense of cause and effect. Now that sense is weakening. Algorithmic systems influence what you see, what you read, what you buy, who you meet. They filter job opportunities. They rank your visibility. They analyze your behavior more deeply than you analyze yourself. Your social media feed is not neutral. Your search results are not neutral. Even the advertisements that appear feel strangely accurate. You scroll through options believing you are choosing freely, but many of those options were selected for you long before you saw them. Machines process billions of data points about your behavior. They predict your preferences. They guide your attention. It creates the illusion of control. But underneath that illusion, large invisible systems are shaping outcomes. When effort no longer guarantees stability, when choices feel pre-structured, agency begins to erode. And when agency erodes, motivation follows. The third pillar is narrative coherence, the story that gives your life meaning. For centuries, religion provided that story. You were part of a divine plan. Your suffering had purpose. Your actions had purpose. Your actions mattered in a cosmic sense. When religious authority weakened in many societies, other narratives replaced it. National identity, scientific progress, economic growth, class struggle. The promise that each generation would live better than the last. The dream of upward mobility. The belief that history was moving toward something better. There was always a larger story, a framework that explained why your daily effort meant something beyond survival. Fragmenting. Religious institutions struggle to maintain influence in hyper-connected digital cultures. Trust in governments is declining. Media ecosystems are fragmented. Scientific consensus is questioned in online echo chambers. The distinction between fact and opinion is blurred. Shared reality itself feels unstable. You can find an online community to confirm almost any belief, no matter how extreme, no matter how disconnected from evidence. Everyone can construct their own version of truth. When shared narratives dissolve, meaning becomes private. And private meaning is fragile. Why depression feels common? Why addiction to screens, substances, and distractions is increasing? Why conspiracy theories spread rapidly? Why political conversations become extreme and polarized? These are not isolated problems. They are symptoms of structural psychological destabilization. And here is the part many people are underestimating. The coming years will not simply continue this trend gradually. There will be a convergence. A moment when multiple pressures intensify at the same time. Artificial intelligence will not remain abstract. It will move from demonstrations to daily life integration at scale. Automation will not be theoretical. It will become visible in workplaces. Creative industries will not just experiment with machine assistance. They will depend on it. Decision-making in companies, in governments, in education systems will increasingly involve algorithms. At the same time, the first generation that grew up entirely inside the digital ecosystem will fully enter adulthood. They were raised on constant stimulation, instant feedback, global connectivity, but they will inherit a labor market and social structure that may not reward the expectations they developed. Layer onto that the long-term economic effects of decisions made during and after the global pandemic. Debt structures, remote work transformations, shifts in supply chains, redefine social norms. These changes are still unfolding. When these forces overlap, the psychological impact will intensify. Most people are preparing incorrectly. They believe the future will be a louder version of today. More competition, more speed, more noise. So they try to strengthen the old strategies, work harder, gain more credentials, control more variables, hold tighter to certainty. But tightening your grip does not stabilize a moving floor. The difference between those who adapt and those who collapse will not be intelligence alone. It will not be resources alone. It will be something deeper, a mental shift, a different way of relating to uncertainty. Instead of predictability, we must learn to find stability inside impermanence. That sounds abstract, but it is practical. It means building identity around qualities that do not depend on a fixed future. Curiosity, emotional regulation, capacity to learn quickly, ability to collaborate across differences. Comfort with revision. It means planning shorter cycles, thinking in experiments instead of lifetime commitments, becoming comfortable with iteration, adjusting quickly without interpreting change as failure. Instead of traditional agency defined as controlling outcomes, we must develop responsive agency, the power to influence through attention, through the quality of our choices, through where we place energy. You may not control global systems, but you control what you train your mind to focus on. You control how you respond to uncertainty. You control how you treat others in unstable environments. And instead of relying on one grand narrative to explain everything, we may need to accept a world of partial stories, smaller frameworks, local meaning, contribution within immediate circles rather than waiting for universal clarity. This shift is uncomfortable. The human brain evolved to seek patterns and stability. Ambiguity feels threatening, but resisting this transformation will intensify suffering. It is sensitivity to structural change. Your nervous system recognizes instability before your conscious mind categorizes it. The question is not how to eliminate uncertainty. That is impossible. The question is whether you can train yourself to move with it. Imagine two people standing before a massive wave. One tries to build a wall in front of it. The other learns to surf. The wall may feel solid at first, but when the wave hits, rigidity becomes liability. The surfer does not stop the wave. The surfer adapts to its movement. We are entering a period where psychological flexibility will matter more than rigid expertise. Continuous learning will matter more than static knowledge. Emotional resilience will matter more than technical mastery alone. The crisis will not only be economic. It will not only be technological. It will be emotional and existential. People will question identity, purpose, direction, belonging. But crisis also creates possibility. When old pillars fall, new structures can be designed, not identical to the past, not based on illusions of permanent control, but based on awareness. But your response does not have to be unconscious. You can build habits that strengthen attention. You can reduce algorithmic influence by being intentional about information consumption. You can prioritize deep human conversations over passive digital engagement. You can teach children adaptability instead of fixed career identities. You cannot slow the speed of change, but you cannot slow the speed of change, but you can increase the flexibility of your mind. Chest is not only fear. It is also a signal, a call to evolve psychologically at the same pace as technology evolves externally. Some will cling to collapsing narratives and experience disorientation. Others will gradually accept that uncertainty is not an enemy, but a permanent condition of modern existence. The difference will not be who avoids fear. It will be who learns to move through it without freezing. When you wake up again at 3 o'clock in the morning, instead of asking how to restore the old world, ask a different question. What kind of mind survives in a world that changes this fast? What kind of habits create stability without predictability? What kind of identity does not depend on one fixed story? The answers will not come all at once. They will emerge through practice, through awareness, through conscious adaptation. This is not the end of meaning. It is the end of automatic meaning. It is not the end of agency. It is the transformation of agency. It is not the end of stability. It is the redefinition of stability. And whether 2026 becomes a year of collapse or a year of awakening will depend less on technology itself and more on how prepared our inner structures are to meet it. To move forward in this new era, we must learn to recognize patterns and work with them instead of trying to force specific outcomes. For a long time, we believed that if we pushed hard enough, planned carefully enough, and controlled every detail, we could shape reality exactly as we wanted. But the world we are entering does not respond well to rigid control. It responds to awareness, flexibility, and timing. It is more like learning to dance with a partner than trying to perform alone. When you dance with a partner, you listen, you adjust, you feel the rhythm, and sometimes you follow instead of lay. That is the mindset we now need. At the same time, we must let go of the idea that one fixed story can explain everything. For centuries, we relied on single narratives about politics, science, religion, and identity. These narratives gave us comfort because they simplified reality. But the future will require us to live with multiple narratives at once. Some of them may even contradict each other. This does not mean that truth no longer matters. It does not mean that everything is relative or that nothing is real. It means we must develop a more mature relationship with truth. We must understand that different frameworks can be useful in different situations without any of them needing to be absolutely complete. This shift is not optional. Those who refuse to adapt their thinking will struggle deeply. It will be like trying to use a road map to navigate the open ocean. The map may be perfectly accurate for highways and cities, but it is useless when there are no roads. Many people will cling to old mental structures because they feel safe and familiar, but familiarity does not guarantee survival in a new environment. What makes this especially painful is that much of the suffering ahead is unnecessary. The changes themselves cannot be stopped. Technology will continue to evolve. Social systems will continue to shift. Artificial intelligence will continue to grow. But the psychological collapse that many fear is not inevitable. It happens when people refuse to develop the mental capacities needed for this new reality. If we prepare our minds, we can do more than survive. We can thrive. We are not simply going through another phase of technological innovation. We are living through a historical transition comparable to the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution. Those periods did not just introduce new tools, they changed how humans lived, thought, and related to each other. Entire social structures were rebuilt. Entire belief systems were transformed. We are now at a similar threshold. The societies that understand this first and intentionally develop new psychological strength will gain a massive advantage. They will educate their citizens differently. They will teach emotional flexibility, critical thinking, and cooperation with intelligent systems. Meanwhile, societies that continue operating with outdated assumptions about identity, work, and authority will face intense dysfunction. The instability they experience will make today's problems seem minor. Do you feel the tension between how fast the world is changing and how slowly your mind can process it? Have you experienced moments when you're unsure what is real and what is artificial, when you cannot tell what will last and what will disappear tomorrow? Many people feel this quietly but rarely speak about it. They fear being judged. They fear sounding confused or outdated, but your experience is valid. You are not weak for feeling overwhelmed. In fact, you may simply be aware. If you feel this growing disconnection from the future, share it. Your honesty may help someone else realize they are not alone. We are all moving through this transition together, even if we rarely admit it openly. History shows us that there is a difference between change and transformation. Change is when something becomes different but remains essentially the same. Transformation is when something becomes something entirely new. When a caterpillar grows larger, that is change. When it becomes a butterfly, that is transformation. And during transformation, there is always a stage of dissolution. The old form must break down completely before the new one can emerge. Humanity is entering that cocoon stage. The old structures of identity, economy, knowledge, and even truth are dissolving. The difficulty is that, unlike the caterpillar, we remain conscious during the process. We can feel the old systems breaking down, but we cannot yet clearly see what the new form will look like. This awareness without clarity creates deep anxiety. It is like standing on a bridge that is slowly disappearing behind you while the other side is hidden in fog. This is what may define the psychological crisis of 2026, not a financial collapse alone, not a political collapse alone, not a political collapse, but a collapse of certainty. When too many people realize that the frameworks they relied on no longer function, panic can spread. But beneath that panic is something deeper and more important. We are not just witnessing changes in society, we are witnessing a shift in human cognition itself. For thousands of years, our intelligence has been supported by tools. Writing extended memory, printing spread ideas, the internet connected minds globally. But even with these tools, we maintained a clear boundary between what was inside our heads and what existed outside in the world. Now that boundary is fading. When you cannot distinguish between human-written and machine-generated text, something fundamental changes. When algorithms know your habits, preferences, and emotional patterns better than you do, the idea of an isolated self begins to weaken. Your decisions are shaped by recommendation systems. Your memories are stored in digital archives. Your questions are answered instantly by artificial systems trained on the sum of human knowledge. So where does your mind end and the artificial system begin? This is not just philosophy. It affects identity, responsibility, and meaning. Our sense of self has always depended on boundaries. We believed there was a clear line between me and the world. But as this line becomes blurred, many people experience what psychologists describe as ego psychologists describe as ego dissolution. Usually, this happens in rare circumstances. Now it is happening collectively. At a massive scale, most individuals will respond by resisting. They will try to strengthen their identity. They will seek rigid ideologies. They will demand clear answers. They will attempt to control everything. But this resistance creates tension. The more tightly you try to hold water in your hands, the faster it slips away. Anxiety increases. Compulsive behavior increases. Eventually, exhaustion follows behavior, increases. Instead of defending old boundaries, we can learn to function with a more flexible sense of identity. This does not mean losing ourselves. It means expanding what we consider to be ourselves. Think about a skilled musician playing a guitar. There is still a distinction between the musician and the instrument. But during performance, they act as one system. The music emerges from their integration. The musician does not disappear. Their individuality becomes stronger through the connection. In the same way, humans working with intelligent systems can expand their creative and intellectual power. The key is developing what we might call a porous identity. This is the ability to maintain continuity of self while interacting fluidly with larger systems of intelligence. You remain a distinct person, but you are also part of something broader. Imagine being a drop of water in the ocean. The drop maintains its structure, yet it is inseparable from the ocean around it. This metaphor describes the future of identity, not isolated, not dissolved, but integrated. This transformation will not automatically produce positive outcomes. It depends on whether we consciously engage with it. We can shape how this integration unfolds. Education systems can teach children how to think critically alongside AI. Social systems can encourage cooperation instead of competition. Political systems can adapt to distributed intelligence rather than centralized control. We are speaking about the emergence of a new kind of civilization. A civilization that understands intelligence as something shared and interconnected. A civilization that sees identity as dynamic rather than fixed. The societies that guide this shift wisely will shape the next chapter of history. Those that resist will experience prolonged instability. What makes this moment urgent is the speed of change. The agricultural revolution unfolded over thousands of years. The Industrial Revolution took centuries. This transformation is unfolding within decades. Our nervous systems evolved for slower transitions. Our institutions were designed for gradual change. Now everything is accelerating. By 2026, the mismatch between external speed and internal capacity may become impossible to ignore. It will feel like running modern software on outdated hardware. Systems will freeze. People will feel overwhelmed. But when systems crash, there is also space for redesign. Crisis and opportunity are two sides of the same event. The psychological instability many fear could also be the birth of a more adaptive human consciousness. The question is not whether change will happen. The question is whether we will engage with it intentionally. If we choose conscious participation, the coming years may not feel like disaster. They may feel like the greatest adventure in human history. Imagine being part of the first generation to discover flight. Imagine being among the first to explore space. That sense of uncertainty, mixed with possibility, is what stands before us. But courage is required. We must release old mental structures that once provided comfort. We must accept uncertainty without collapsing into fear. Ancient philosophers described as wisdom, not simply knowledge, but the ability to live gracefully amid uncertainty. If you recognize these feelings in yourself, understand that you are not alone. Many people sense this transition but struggle to articulate it. By joining this community, you connect with others who are also searching for clarity and depth. Each week, we explore the defining questions of our era. We do not just analyze events, we examine how to live wisely within them. This space is not only about information, it is about preparation. It is about strengthening the mind so we can navigate transformation consciously instead of being carried by confusion. Together, we can explore how to move beyond survival and into growth. Subscribe and continue this journey with us. Let us keep this essential conversation alive. The metamorphosis of humanity is already underway. The only remaining question is whether we will move through it, asleep or awake.